Well, good morning, my friend. Hope your day's starting well. I want to talk to you this morning about something that's pretty difficult for me to talk about. This is not an easy topic, but one in which I believe is absolutely critical for so many couples today. How can you save your marriage by putting yourself first? I want to talk to you about how you can save your marriage by putting yourself first. Let me tell you a story. Robin and my marriage was virtually over. We were at a very, very bad place. I had just cheated on her and had an affair. We were going in opposite directions. We looked good on the surface, but behind closed doors, our marriage was not so good. Most people have no idea. She had cheated on me years earlier. We didn't outwardly fight. We didn't have major conflict in our relationship. But we had just become more like roommates, and we had spent most of our time over the years trying to change each other. Our marriage wasn't horrible and ugly. It just wasn't healthy, and it was now about to end in divorce. After my affair and disclosure, we came to the realization that we were about to lose it all. I was driving down the road one day on I-25, and I'll never forget it. And I found myself weeping. It was one of those weeping where your chest is just heaving, and I had tears streaming down my face, and I was on the phone with my wife, and I had to pull over in order to be safe. And I'd been thinking about all the things I was throwing away. My ministry, my relationship with my daughters, the impact on my parents and my siblings, my influence. But most importantly, I was realizing that I was throwing away my relationship with the person that I fell in love with and wanted to spend my life with. Robin was in Arizona and I was in Albuquerque, and she was reeling from the impact of my betrayal. She was reeling with her own emotions and thoughts and feelings and confusion and what do we do, and are we losing our marriage? So what saved our marriage? And why do we not have just a surviving marriage today, but a thriving marriage today? You see, something changed, and it is a discovery that can not just change your marriage, but can change every area of your life. We discovered the importance of putting self first. Now, I'm not talking about self-centeredness. I'm not talking about a selfishness. I'm talking about what we now call the Planck principle and the oxygen principle. The Planck principle and the oxygen principle. You see, most couples that we talk to now in our marriage ministries are trying to change their spouse, just like we were. We spent so much time trying to change their spouse. In fact, most couples can make a very quick list of all the faults and flaws in their spouse. He's lazy. He's always depressed, doesn't pay attention to me. I wish he would, if he would only. And then and we can make a quick list. She's always nagging and critical. I'm the only one trying in this relationship. It's funny, in all my years of working with couples, how often I hear two couples, one will sit in my office and say, I'm the only one doing anything. I'm always the one having to work on this relationship. She'll go out of the office, he'll come into the office, and he's like, I'm the only one working on this relationship. I'm always the one having to do everything. And I'm like, how can two people have the same perspective that they are the only one? And then I realized that's exactly what we were doing. We were the one trying to change the other person, and we spent all of our time, effort, and energy focused on this list of all the negative crap in each other. And we were trying to change the other person. Our focus was on the other person and what we wanted them to change. And now, add to that, infidelity and broken trust. Long story shortened, Robin started practicing what we call the plank principle, where she started looking in the mirror and taking the plank out of her own eye before trying to take the speck out of mine. Now, the truth is, I didn't have just a speck. And in all reality, mine was more of a plank and hers was probably the speck. But the principle is still the same, whether it's a speck or a plank. She started to take the dust out of her eyes. She started to deal with her own self first. She started to look in the mirror and become honest with all of her stuff in her life. The plank principle that changed our marriage was when we started dealing honestly with our own issues first. We each began to work on us instead of the other person. We found things we valued in the other person and started to focus on those and value those. But we became real with our issues personally. And the truth was, size was irrelevant. It didn't matter how big our issue was. We had an issue that we had to deal with. And when we started dealing with our own issues, we started asking ourselves this question. If I want a spouse who is, fill in the blank, am I? If I want a spouse who is trustworthy, am I trustworthy? If I want a spouse who listens well, do I listen well? If I want a spouse who is not critical, am I not critical? If I want a spouse who cherishes me, do I cherish? If I want a spouse who loves me unconditionally, am I unconditional in my life, in my love? If I want a spouse who is, am I? And when we took personal responsibility, whether the other person did or didn't, we started to watch our marriage change and grow. And we found ourselves moving more and more toward each other. We found ourselves more and more attracted to each other. You see, two best selves are attractive. Two best selves are attractive. We'll leave the oxygen principle for another day, but consider this. Is there anything in you that you need to work on? Are you critical? Are you angry? Are you judgmental? Are you cherishing your spouse even when they are irritating? Do you truly love unconditionally? Or do you have a I don't because she attitude? Or I don't because he attitudes? Whenever we add the word because, it's a conditional word. Or if. I will if. You want to save your marriage and move it towards extraordinary? Put self first and become the absolute best version of you can be. And watch your marriage begin to slowly change. You see, we all have a choice how we show up every day. And yes, you may be right. He is a jerk, and he does jerky things. She is irritating and hard to love. That can all be true. But that's not an excuse to not show up as your best self. We do the right thing, not if they do. We do the right thing because it's the right thing to do. We don't do the right thing because of what someone else does or doesn't do. We do the right thing because it's the right thing to do. How will you show up today? Let's show up as our best self. Have a great day.